Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to StarpropertyTV. Today we have a Singaporean property writer with us by the name of Khalil Adis, renowned for his independent views and insights on the property market here and abroad. Khalil has become one of the most sought after property speakers in the country. Khalil, we are so fortunate to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Alright, Khalil, for the benefit of the audience, tell us about your background. How did you end up in real estate and remain so passionate about the industry?
Well, I started out as a writer, and I was doing lifestyle writing. I was writing for a lot of publications. In fact, my very first job was writing for Juice magazine, which was a clubbing magazine. So you can imagine I was like going to Zouk every weekend. So I was subsequently, after I got my degree, I was looking for another job as a writing position, and writing position didn't really pay quite well. So the only position that was available was for a position of an editor for Property Report. However, I was like, I was not sure because I didn't have the knowledge on writing about property, and being an editor is a step up. So I decided, okay, let's take this challenge, because I feel that if I can write, if I'm really a good writer, then I should be able to write across any topic. So I had to cut the challenge, and the learning curve was very steep. And after that, it's just been one adventure after another. I didn't think that I would end up here in Malaysia.
It happened by a stroke of luck.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, well done. And why we have you here is also because you've recently published Property Buying for GenYs, which has made it to the bestsellers list, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Tell us, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, what inspired me to write this book was that I was facing a very difficult situation in my life, whereby I was desperately looking to buy a home in Singapore. And if you are familiar with the property market in Singapore, our property prices are so expensive. It's already, for our public flats, which is called the HDB flat in Singapore, it has already hit 3 million ringgit, which is equivalent to $1 million in Singapore. So you can imagine me. I was freelancing, and after that, I had very little savings, and subsequently I started my business. So just buying my first property itself was such an arduous process. But I was very lucky because I already had the knowledge as a property writer and a property journalist. So with that, and as I became more and more well known in Malaysia, I could see a similar situation. When I went to Malaysia, it's like, hey, this looks very familiar. This was like me, last time. So when I saw young Malaysians struggling the way that I was struggling, not sure how to buy their first home and not sure if they can afford it, I decided like, hey, I want to write this book. I approached MPH, said, I want to do this, and I want to help young Malaysians, because Malaysians have been there for me since day one in my career. So this was my way of giving back to society. So when I wrote this book, it was really from an altruistic position to really share my knowledge. And I'm very blessed that I guess it has reached out and touched the hearts of many young Malaysians, because I got a lot of emails, and the fact that it is still on the bestsellers list speaks volume about it.
I can definitely vouch for that, because I've read the book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And
thank you very much.
Also, because Khalil here is feeling pretty generous today, you've decided that you're going to give 10 signed copies. If you want to stand a chance to win, just follow the steps on the bottom of the page below. All right.
Yeah.
And again, regarding property buying for GenY, you mentioned that you see a lot of young Malaysians wanting to buy properties.
Yeah.
Would you still say that property is still woke among young Malaysians? And I ask you this in particular because we see this culture of wanting to rent properties for life becoming more prevalent, especially in the West, amongst the young people. They say that renting instead of owning a property gives them mobility, and some even argue it's actually not a bad decision economically wise. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, if you look at the Western countries, they are mostly developed countries. And because they are developed countries, therefore, the cost of acquiring a property becomes very expensive. I mean, look closer to Malaysia, like our next door neighbor, Singapore, where I'm from. It's already heading that way. And I'm already seeing a lot of young Singaporeans, because the property prices are so expensive, they are renting a property. Now, because Malaysia is still a developing country, and because the beauty of Malaysia is because you have so much land, and because you have so much land, you have the ability to own freehold properties. So what my key message is for young Malaysians is take advantage of this, because Malaysia is one of the very few countries that you can own freehold properties, and you can still find affordable properties in the market. You just need to understand where. Now, owning a property is a basic human right. So I would urge young Malaysians, if don't be swayed by this whole rent-to-own concept that you see in the West. You think that it's trendy. You definitely, sometime in a point of your life, you need a roof over your head. And take advantage of all these opportunities that you have in Malaysia, because the government is coming to help you. Like you have the My First Home Deposit Scheme. They have really tweaked the Prima scheme to make it easier for you to own your property. Take advantage of all this and acquire a property, because property is one of the rare assets that can help to enhance your net worth and generate wealth for you. Yeah.
All right, interesting. And I want to talk to you about the situation back home in Singapore.
Yes.
Last year, we read that private home prices suffered the steepest fall in the last 7 years.
Right.
And on top of that, you hear reports of businesses closing down and moving out of Singapore.
Yes. What's
behind these happenings?
Well, it's a few reasons, because in Singapore we have the cooling measures, same like what you have here, like minimum purchase price, but we don't have that. We have the additional buyer's stamp duty. That means if you were a foreign purchaser, you want to buy a property in Singapore, you have to pay a certain percentage, between 10 to 15%. You've got the seller's stamp duty. If I currently have a condominium or private property and I want to sell my property, I have to pay tax to the government.
I see.
And then you also have the total debt service ratio, which makes it very difficult for me, if I want to buy a property, to get a loan, because they take into factor your credit card loan, your car loan, so on and so forth. So collectively, all these measures have made the property market very soft. In addition, Singapore, we are in a technical recession for the third quarter. The economy has shrunk. So a combination of this plus the global situation, the uncertainty, and the fact that there's a lot of jobs that have moved out from Singapore, manufacturing sector has been badly affected. It has affected overall the number of jobs. A lot of people are being retrenched in Singapore, and therefore when you have retrenchments, you also will have an effect on the property market. So this has made Singapore's property market incredibly challenging.
What can you say about the demand? Is there still demand for homes in Singapore?
For sure. I mean, affordable properties, just like in Malaysia, there's still demand for affordable properties. But the great thing is this: our government has been ramping up supply for affordable homes under the HDB, which is a Housing Development Board. Every year, without fail, our government has delivered 20,000 homes. So for this segment of affordable homes, it's still doing really, really well. But if you're talking about the high-end market, a lot of properties are being sold at a loss.
I see.
Yeah, so you see very two contrasting views here.
And on top of that, you having been involved in both Malaysian and Singapore's property market.
Right.
Tell us, how does it differ in terms of housing models?
Well, in Singapore, the property market is very much controlled by the government. 80% of Singaporeans live in government-owned flats.
80%?
Yes, yes. So the great thing is our government really makes sure that every Singaporean will have a roof over their heads. Whereas, for example, here in Malaysia, the difference is this: the government, I do not have the data, but majority of the housing projects here are being built by private developers. The government only takes a very small percentage of that. So because of this, we are seeing an anomaly in Singapore versus in Malaysia. Let me just go back to Singapore. Because it's driven by the government, they have already this mandate that, yes, we will make sure that all of you will have a roof over their head. So for Singaporeans, among millennials, this has already been sorted out. We know for sure that our government will help us. But in Malaysia, because by virtue that it's been driven by the private sector, then this begs the question, because as a private developer, what is your KPI? Your KPI differs from a government, right? Your KPI is like, I want to maximize my profit. So because of this, we are seeing an anomaly in the property market whereby you have a lot of supply of high-end to medium-end homes, but where the demand is, where demand for such homes is far and few between. Whereas the demand for affordable homes is a lot, but the supply is very little.
Yeah,
which is why,
right?
that's a mismatch right now. So which is why your federal government, the state government has been coming up with various programs, for example, Prima, Rumah Milik Mampu, in each states to address these concerns. So
could we adopt a similar housing model to?
I think they were studying and they were adopting a little bit about the HDB, the Housing Development Board program. For example, they have the minimum, for example, the minimum occupation period. In Singapore, the minimum occupation period is 5 years, whereby within that 5 years, you cannot sell your property. They also adopted the similar models here. I think what would be great for Malaysia to move forward in order to address this housing concern is, if it's possible, to have a central government body. For example, in Singapore, we have the Urban Redevelopment Authority, where they're able to gauge demand. Like, okay, they would tell, okay, because the government controls the whole land in Singapore, they can tell, okay, the demand right now is for high-end property. So they will release the land for high-end condominiums. And then they would gauge, okay, the demand right now is for affordable homes. So they will sell the land to HDB and then to build affordable homes. If there could be a similar central governing body in Malaysia to gauge this demand, perhaps this could help solve a lot of the current housing issues moving forward. Yes.
It's very interesting, and I think it's very timely we talk about Iskandar Malaysia. I know you write a lot about Iskandar.
Yes.
Fill us in on what's happening. Is it, are the talks of Forest City being a ghost town greatly exaggerated? Is there an oversupply of properties?
Right.
A mismatch as well?
All right.
Yeah, what's happening in Iskandar?
Okay, just a little bit of background. I've been covering Iskandar Malaysia since it was a baby, like 2 years old, until now about 10 years old. And in fact, Iskandar Malaysia was the market that was my launch pad as my career in Malaysia as a property speaker. So back then, when we were studying the master plan for Iskandar Malaysia, it was very attractive and it was very sustainable, because you could see that behind every economic cluster, it's being planned in such a way that there's job creation, which will therefore lead to demands for homes. But somewhere along the way, Iskandar Malaysia has gone through a cosmetic surgery, so to speak. I hardly recognize Iskandar Malaysia now. So the entire master plan has changed so much that it has raised a little bit of concern for me, whether this is going to be sustainable or not. I want to go back into the Singapore model because it's very closely related to Iskandar Malaysia. Now, in Singapore, we currently have about new supply of about 2,000 new condominium units, and that already, to us, is an oversupply. Because right now, because of this new supply, housing prices for condominiums have dropped. Rental have already dropped. And in Iskandar Malaysia, we don't have the data, but it looks as though there is going to be a few giants coming up, definitely more than 2,000. And these homes are generally geared towards the foreign investors market, they're not for locals. My concern is this: when you don't have enough demand for locals to live there, and with the current economy and with the current perception of Malaysia right now that foreign investors have, what will happen to all these homes? Possibly we're going to see a lot of ghost towns that's coming up. And when you have a lot of this supply coming on stream, it will also have an impact on the local property market. Because imagine if you're local and you're trying to sell your property, because of all this supply that's coming on stream, your property price almost will fall as well. And if you're trying to rent out your property, these surrounding developments will have an impact on the rental market as well, which has explained why Singapore's Temasek Holdings have held back launching their project in Danga Bay. Having said that, I want to also congratulate IRDA as well as the local authority for having such a good hindsight and for being able to look through and tap onto Singapore's position as an international city to bring investors there. I had a bit of reservations about Forest City until I had a chat with Dr. Daniel Gambero, and I saw like, okay, possibly this could work. Because if you look at Forest City, initially my concern was this, like, okay, they reclaimed the land so quickly.
Yeah.
It took Singapore 15 years to reclaim our land, and they do it in a few months.
Yeah.
And like, okay, who's going to live there? So I had concerns whether it's going to be sustainable or not. But then, as I chatted with Dr. Daniel, and I understand that there are country garden offices around the world, offices around the world, then to me it's like, yes, this probably could make sense, because what you're doing is that you're kind of going to draw international buyers as well as potential businesses to have their base in Forest City, which would therefore have a positive spillover impact on the overall local market in Iskandar Malaysia. So this is something that I'm still digesting, and I think that it could possibly be something that's very worth and interesting to look at.
Are they moving in the right direction, would you say?
For some of the projects, it seems I have my reservations, because you're building really giant townships, which I'm not sure whether the market can absorb or not. Okay, so that part I have my reservations. But on the other hand, when I look at Forest City, it could possibly work. Yeah, because you're bringing international cities.
Iskandar Malaysia stealing talents away from Greater KL?
Well, in my opinion, because I have friends who used to live in KL, they've moved to Iskandar. Yes, we're seeing for the first time. In fact, we're seeing that drain from KL to Iskandar Malaysia. And if you look at Singapore, I'm like one example who from Singapore went to Iskandar Malaysia, right, and then went to KL. So yes, we're seeing that drain going towards there. So the center of gravity has changed.
And that would do well for KL as well, you know.
This, together with the high-speed rail, together with the RTS system, it's going to bode well for Iskandar Malaysia, for Malaysia, and for Singapore.
There's so much to look forward to.
Exactly. You have to understand, Singapore, we have our constraints. We are in a tiny island. We need Iskandar Malaysia as much as Iskandar Malaysia needs us.
I see.
And yes.
On a personal note, under the current market's circumstances, would you still say property is the best investment vehicle?
Of course it is. It's the best. I can't think of anything else. I'm really like shocked, you know, like, okay, in Singapore, we forget about buying a car because it's so expensive. We're like, okay, never mind, forget about buying a car. We take MRT and we save out our money to buy a property. But in Malaysia, it's the other way around, because I understand that public transport here is not as well connected, but the mentality here is this, like, okay, after I get my first job, I will buy a car. But you see, a car depreciates in value. What you should be doing first is that, never mind lah, you know, you hold off buying a car, you save that money and you buy a property. Because a property, the beauty about property is that it will increase in value over the years, and it will enhance your net worth, and it will generate rental income for you. And the beauty in Malaysia is that you have so many schemes to help the Bumi Putras, you have so many schemes to help young Malaysians. Why don't you take advantage of this, you know? Delay, I call it delayed gratification. Delay buying a car first. Never mind, suffer, take Uber. I take Uber wherever I go. Save up your money and buy a car first. Buy a property first. And then after you have your property, you have your basic needs being fulfilled, then you look into buying a car.
And lastly, before we go, as well, I'm sure you know that these programs are to inspire young individuals. And so tell us, what is your one recommendation you would offer to a Gen Y who's just starting out in the workplace? And these recommendations can come in the form of books to read, workshops, seminar to attend, courses they should take. I mean, times are changing, you know. Those days, you do your MBA after you get a degree and all. Will you still say it's the same? What is that one recommendation you can give young people just starting off in the workplace?
Well, number one, do not be overly swayed, or, you know, like, I know young people, you go on Instagram and you go on Facebook and you see that, wow, my friends are here, traveling here, there, or like they're at this cafe eating expensive food. Like, really, don't be easily swayed, and don't feel that you have to conform to all this, because if you feel that you have to conform, and if your friends look down on you because you don't go to all these places and you cannot afford it, then these are not your friends. It's very important to be true to yourself. Accept yourself for who you are. You are a unique individual. You are meant to do something great in this world. So just accept yourself and just be yourself. And secondly, do not be easily swayed by all these flashy cars, people who say like, oh, I've got a Lamborghini. The most important thing is to be happy and to own a property. Once you have a property, once you're happy, everything will fall into place. Just be yourself.
All right, very interesting. Thank you guys for watching again. We have Khalil Adis with us, and I'm Jonathan Roberts. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice.